The idea of change oftentimes scares the shit out of people. And the idea of a step backwards feels like disrespect to our nation and country. But the truth of the matter is that you really have very few options when it comes down to what are you gonna do, right? Like you have options of I'm going to stand here and do what I know. I'm going to stand here and do something that I understand. Or I'm going to create and invent a new way of doing things. And the problem is that we all stand here and we look at shit. Like we look at what we're doing as men and what we're doing as a nation and what we're doing as families. And we think that this will last forever. We ultimately strive for stability. But oftentimes, and honestly, change is more likely than anything else. The world never stays the same. In a time of a man's life, he can be birthed into a town or birthed into a village, birthed into a city, birthed into a nation. And by the time he dies, that same ground could have changed hands. The people around him could have become from a new nation. Change is imminent. It is what it is. Sometimes you have to look at things and understand that they're never going to be the same again. Between inventions and invasions and plagues and deaths and the process of a nation's success and rise and fall. It's something that you can't account for when you really start looking at shit. So with that being said, I want to talk about our nation's food supply a little bit. And I wanted to bring y'all some information that maybe you do know and stuff that you don't know. I want to talk about the supposed food shortages more because, well, I'm gonna be honest with you. Fucking Max Maria be getting in my motherfucking head sometimes. And I want to show you some things that I know and that was handed to me. And I want to give this knowledge over to y'all and help you to understand what's going on around us. All right. And why things are the way they are and why they will continue to change as the days go by. In the meantime, I'm going to begin with this video from a documentary called Food Inc. And it deals with the Smithfield plant and the individuals who they had hired, who they began with, who they went to, and who they're with today, and who they're using to make your food. Because I think it's important that you and I and everybody else around us really understand what it is that holds us together on a very, very, very intimate nature. Anyway, here, check this out.
100 years ago, when Upton Sinclair wrote The Jungle, there was a beef trust that wielded enormous power. Immigrants from Eastern Europe were being abused in the absence of any kind of government regulation. There were horrible, disfiguring injuries and even deaths. Things got better. They slowly got better. Teddy Roosevelt took on the beef trust. Labor unions slowly organized meatpacking workers and turned it into one of the best industrial jobs in the United States. By the 1950s, to be a meatpacking worker was like being an auto worker. There was a good wage, good benefits, pension. And then what happened? Well, the meatpacking companies got bigger in order to serve the needs of the fast food industry, which was its biggest customer. Some of the meatpacking companies, like IBP, borrowed the same sort of labor practices in the fast food industry, cutting wages, making sure there were no unions, speeding up production, and having the worker do the same task again and again and again. And meatpacking is now one of the most dangerous jobs in the United States. the meatpacking industry also recruited a new set of immigrants, illegal immigrants and recent immigrants from Mexico.
Many of the illegal immigrants coming to America were corn farmers in Mexico. NAFTA led to a flooding of the Mexican market with cheap American corn. It's put more than 1.5 million Mexican farmers out of work. They couldn't compete with this cheap corn coming from America. So what happens to those 1.5 million Mexican farmers?
Meatpackers like IBP, National Beef, and Montford began actively recruiting in Mexico. Companies advertised on the radio and newspapers. IBP set up a bus service in Mexico to bring workers into the United States. For years, the government turned a blind eye to the recruitment of immigrants by the meatpacking industry. But now, when there's an anti-immigrant movement, they're cracking down all of a sudden, but they're not cracking down on these companies. The government is cracking down on the workers.
Immigration agents are arresting Smithfield workers at this trailer park. This is an agreement between Smithfield and immigration authorities. They get rid of 15 workers per day, but you don't see any massive raids. That way, it doesn't affect the production line. And she asked me a question. Not you. I don't see anybody arresting no Smithfield managers. Nobody in the plant that had anything to do with the fact that those workers were hired is being arrested. What we see today is it's workers who are producing for this company, who are working hard. Those are the people who get arrested. We want to pay the cheapest price for our food. We don't understand that that comes at a price. These workers, they've been here for 10, 15 years, processing your bacon, your holiday ham, and now they're getting picked up like they're criminals. And these companies are making billions of dollars.
Like, yo, look, I'm not like standing here like pro-immigrant at all. It's just real shit. Why aren't the fucking CEOs and the corporations going to jail for literally recruiting these goddamn workers and busting them in? Like, that's fucking grimy. And I've always bitched about this. Like, yo, we should not be using slave labor to, process our fucking food. If we can't afford it, legit, we shouldn't be fucking having it. But real talk, y'all should watch. Y'all should go to that website, and check out that movie. Like, real shit. If it's still around. I don't know if that website's still around. If not, the movie's called Food Inc. It's a great fucking movie. A lot of great resources in it. A lot of things that y'all don't know that y'all don't know. Like, a lot of the information that I have about when I talk about Walmart and things of this nature, it came from this fucking movie. Like, this is a movie about, small, trying to do better with our food and, like, explaining the food corporation and stuff and the whole nine. Like, and they are honest. And it's a great journalist. The person who made this movie is amazing. I'll be real. I'd love to shake the dude's hand. But anyway, yeah, so let's see who it is, that the media is talking about and what the media is saying about this South Dakota Smithfield plant that closed. All right. So this is an article from the New York Times. And see, let me be real with you here. All right. I think it's kind of important that we stand here and look at things for what they really are and what the situation really is. All right. Let's read into this and you'll understand exactly what I'm saying. South Dakota meat plant is now country's biggest coronavirus hotspot. Refugees from around the world worked at the Smithfield pork factory in Sioux Falls. Now they face mounting illnesses and the sudden loss of their jobs. And look, it's some broad from the fucking Sudan. An immigrant from El Salvador bought a 3-bedroom home with a basement for her family. A single mother from Ethiopia sent her daughters to college. A refugee from Sudan bought bunk beds for her boys, new couches, and a dining table. Before the Smithfield pork factory in Sioux Falls became the radiating core of South Dakota's coronavirus outbreak, with more than 640 cases linked to the plant, it had been kind of a beacon for American prosperity for tens of thousands of employees who landed on the high prairie from Africa, East Asia, and Latin America, but the opportunities were not obtained easily. For more than 100 years, people fleeing war zones and abject poverty put in long hours at the 8-story plant that churns 24 hours a day alongside with tree-lined Big Sioux River. They worked side by side in front of speeding conveyor belts behind vibrating electric knives powerful enough to slice through a hog every 30 to 40 seconds. Many iced their wrists at night and relied on a daily dose of ibuprofen to keep up with the work of slaughtering, processing, and packaging pork products for global consumption. In return, they received wages above the minimum and health benefits that stretched far in a state with a low cost of living, uplifting generations of immigrants who arrived in the United States without formal education or knowledge of the English language. That all appeared to be in jeopardy this week when the Smithfield plant became the nation's largest single source of the coronavirus hotspot. Its employees now make about 44% of the diagnosis in South Dakota, and a team of researchers from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have traveled there to assess how the outbreak spiraled out of control. Smithfield is the largest meat processing plant facility to close in the face of the coronavirus. The startling toll of the workers have drawn criticisms from union leaders who say the facility's owners waited too long to introduce safety measures and instead encouraged employees to meet demand for their products that surged around amid the pandemic. But workers, many at home battling week-long fevers and debilitating body aches, are now facing another cruel reality of the virus. They're mourning both their co-workers and the jobs that made them sick. With looming bills and expectations of family members in the United States and abroad, whom they support with their pay from Smithfield, many say they are eager to return to their jobs, including double shifts they routinely put in over 6 and even 7 days a week. During the closures, they have been guaranteed 80 hours of paid leave, far less than most would have earned. Though the routine overtime, through routine overtime, what more might be available through bonuses is unclear. For many of the workers, risk is nothing new. They fled war, food insecurity, ethnic persecution to reach the United States. Though they have seen colleagues crushed by fast-moving machinery, toppled by greasy floors, and burned by powerful cleaning agents, many say they consider the job a privilege. I can't wait to go back to work for the simple reason that this is the only thing that supports my family, said Achut Deng, a Sudanese refugee who in 6 years worked her way up from a wizard knife operator, paid $12.75 an hour, to a shift lead making $18.70. I do feel sorry for everyone who is going through this. I feel sorry for myself, but it's like I feel better now, so I'd rather go back to work. The devastation wrought by the virus in their workplace and families has been swift. Smithfield employees and their family members account for nearly 70% of coronavirus diagnoses in Minnehaha County, which includes Sioux Falls. One worker, Augustin Rodriguez, 64 years old, again, why don't they just lay off everybody over 50? Like, real shit. Just send them home and let them collect unemployment. And let the young end of it and not fuck over everybody to save just the old fucks. I have another article that says the same shit. All right, immigrant from El Salvador, right? These companies are literally just taking advantage of immigrants. That's what the fuck they do. That's why $12.75 an hour to be a wizard knife operator. You know what that means? That means $12.75 an hour to literally be a factory worker where you're risking your fucking life every fucking day. That is bullshit fucking wages. And then you work all that fucking overtime. Just gets eaten up in fucking taxes by these cocksuckers in the federal fucking government. Who cut pork feet at the factory, was active in his church. He lived in the trailer, but was in the process of buying a home. He was a very friendly, respectful person, said Jose Lopez, a former Smithfield worker who had been a break room buddy of Mr. Rodriguez. Added, I have many friends who tested positive. This virus hit us really bad. Yet many workers said the grueling work at the plant before the virus hit had offered them a life that otherwise not have been possible as immigrants or refugees. Honestly, I was able to improve myself, said Yauli Hernandez, a mother of 4 from El Salvador, again, right, who started at the plant in 1999 and earned $17.30 an hour. This is the only place where I was able to make a living and raise my kids. Sarah Birth, whose family moved from Ethiopia in 2001, said her mother brought a 4-bedroom house and sent her kids to college on a single income from the plant. Working at Smithfield, you can provide for your family and not struggle as much as if you were working in California, Chicago, or DC, she said. Cooper Caraway, president of Sioux Falls chapter of the AFL-CIO, said the leaders began sounding alarm bells more than a month ago that the plant, because of its crowded conditions and lack of protective gear, could become a coronavirus hotspot. Managers just kind of dragged their feet. Oh, shut the fuck up. Smithfield officials said they have enhanced cleaning and disinfecting at the plant, provided additional protective gear, and expanded employee health benefits. They said they have also installed plexiglass and other physical barriers, as well as thermal scanning equipment to check for, whatever. We are laser focused on our employees' health and well-being and all necessary actions to protect them. I don't fucking care about you either. All right. Mrs. Dang, the refugee said, she said her colleagues initially figured the virus would not be worse than what they had already lived through, the war and the fighting, not enough to eat. After hours in the factory floors, they had gathered around communal tables in the crowded, boisterous lunchrooms, sharing sambusa from Sudan, egg rolls from China, tibs and injera from Ethiopia. They told stories about that reflect their different paths in the United States, yet struggles that were much the same. At 6 years old, after her grandmother was killed in an attack in her village in Sudan, Mrs. Dang walked to a refugee camp in Ethiopia. She was later resettled in Kenya and eventually in the United States. She has gone days without food and put on shoes for the first time when she was 14. But her bravado this month began to fade. Her fever rose to 103, felt like something was crushing her chest, blah, 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 blah. Right? Yeah, on top of providing for her own children, she also pays for an apartment in Uganda for her parents and for student housing for 2 of her brothers. Yeah, see, nothing like that fucking chain migration nonsense and them sending the money that we're fucking supposed to be making here over fucking seas. This is why immigrants aren't really good for your fucking country. Legit. All it's doing is keeping wages down for American workers. That's what the fuck this is. These people should be making $30 a fucking hour doing this shit. And the whole of the market should have went up years the fuck ago. But it is what it is. All right, so Smithfield actually released statements on their website about this, and I wanted to be able to bring that to y'all so that you could hear exactly what Smithfield's saying about things. And I want to talk about what's going on in Pennsylvania and what might be happening. I think the plants are probably going to end up opening back up this week. So let's get to the 2 statements. Then we'll go to what's going on in my neck of the woods, because we've had 4 plant closures for meat in Pennsylvania. And then, you know what I'm saying, we'll see what the CDC is saying and what they're talking about as far as this week is concerned. This is also from Smithfield website itself. Smithfield, Virginia, April 15, 2020. Smithfield Foods Incorporated announced that it will close its Cudahy, Wisconsin, and Martin City, Missouri facilities beginning later this week. Its Cudahy dry sausage and bacon plant will shutter for 2 weeks. Its Martin City plant, which employs over 400 people and produces spiral and smoke hams, receives raw material from the company's Sioux Falls, South Dakota facility, which is closed indefinitely. Without these raw materials, the facility cannot continue to run. Smithfield will resume operations in Sioux Falls once it receives further directions from local, state, and federal officials. This will also allow the company to bring its Martin City facility back online. The Cudahy Martin City facilities are located in close proximity to urban areas in which community spread of COVID-19 has been prevalent. A small number of employees at both plants have tested positive for COVID-19. Employees will be paid for the next 2 weeks, during which time essential personnel will repeat the rigorous deep cleaning and sanitation that have been ongoing at the facilities. All right, Smithfield Foods to close Sioux Falls, South Dakota plant indefinitely amid COVID-19. This is from the Smithfield actual website themselves. Smithfield Foods Incorporated announced today that its Sioux Falls, South Dakota facility will remain closed until further notice. The plant is one of the largest pork producers or pork processing facilities in the U.S., representing 4 to 5% of U.S. pork production. It supplies nearly 130 million servings of food per week, or about 18 million servings per day, and employs 3,700 people. More than 550 independent family farmers supply the plant. The closure of this facility, combined with a growing list of other protein plants that have shuttered across our industry, is pushing our country perilously close to the edge in terms of our meat supply. It is impossible to keep our grocery stores stocked if our plants are not running. These facility closures also have severe, perhaps disastrous repercussions in many of the supply chains. First and foremost, our nation's livestock farmers. These farmers have nowhere to send their animals, said Kenneth Sullivan, President and Chief Executive for Smithfield. Unfortunately, COVID-19 cases are now ubiquitous across the country. The virus is afflicting communities everywhere. The agriculture and food sectors have not been immune. Numerous plants across the country have COVID-19 positive employees. We continue to run our facilities for one reason: to sustain our nation's food supply during this pandemic. We believe it is our obligation to help feed the country now more than ever. We have a stark choice in our nation. We're either going to produce food or not, even in the face of COVID-19, he concluded. In preparation for a full shutdown, some activity will occur on the plant Tuesday to process product in our inventory, consisting of millions of servings of protein. Smithfield will resume operations in Sioux Falls once further direction is received from state and local federal officials. The company will continue to compensate employees the next 2 weeks in hopes to keep them from joining the ranks of the tens of millions of unemployed Americans across the country. According to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, there's no evidence that food or food packaging being associated with the transmission of COVID-19. More information in Smithfield's COVID-19 response can be found here. CDC assesses plan to reopen Smithfield Foods pork plant in South Dakota, U.S. coronavirus hotspot. Yeah, all right, come on. Oh, back up a little bit. Federal health officials, and listen, I don't know why all these websites operate the way they do. I don't want to watch your fucking stupid video. Legit. Hope to take the first steps towards getting a South Dakota pork processing plant coronavirus hotspot back up and running. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention had staff in Sioux Falls Thursday touring the Smithfield Foods Incorporated plant. The step comes 3 weeks after the first COVID-19 case involving a Smithfield employee was determined on March 24th. The CDC team is assessing conditions and developing an action plan needed to safely reopen the hog harvesting facility. It's been shut down for nearly a week, according to Governor Kristi Noem's office. The next step in the plans are contingent on feedback from the CDC's effort today. Noem spokesman Ian Fury told Sioux Falls Argus Leader, part of the USA Today network. Noem said Thursday that the CID expects to have a report from the CDC in coming days that will be released to the public. The governor also said he's been in close contact with the plant CEO as well as U.S. Secretary Sonny Perdue, which, by the way, I can't believe Sonny Perdue is running things. We're working closely with the plant to make sure it's an environment that's safe for the employee, and also we're doing it in the time frame to help our agriculture producers who are looking to market their hogs. There's actually been reports of them euthanizing hogs and euthanizing cattle as well, just because they, are coming of age, and it's costing them more money to be able to feed these, animals than it is to stand here and actually sell them, because they're going down in massive amounts of prices. And the reason, this is what a lot of people don't understand when they're dumping milk or they're dumping eggs or they're, dumping, crops or whatever, because they're trying to get the price up. All right. It's called supply and demand. If you eliminate supply, the demand side comes up because, as I said, the other day, demand is infinite. Late Wednesday, Smithfield sent a statement to Argus Leader thanking the CDC for support, reiterating its enhanced cleaning taking place at the plant and the education program for its employees to educate them on how to be safe at home and in the community during the pandemic. Smithfield plans to reopen as soon as possible. We recognize the critical, essential nature of work at this facility for the local community, for farmers, and for the entire food system, the statement read. Smithfield will resume operations in Sioux Falls once further direction is received from state and local federal officials. Yeah. All right, so let's check and see what's going on here in the white trash no state and find out what's going on with the 4 plant closures here. All right, so believe it or not, the white trash no state is, part of the motherfucking, actually one of the epicenters of this fucking nonsense as well. PA's had 4 or 5 fucking meat plants that have closed. All right, meat plant problems, processing facilities, union leaders working to reopen. Okay, so when the COVID-19 began to surface in March, the seriousness of the virus was met with levels of denial and even ignorance among both employees and management at several meat processing facilities in Pennsylvania. This is how Wendell Young, the fourth president of United Food and Commercials Workers Local 1776, described the initial situation he encountered as union leadership outlined plans to keep their workers safe. Turns out that the early notions of denial were dangerous as COVID-19 cases swept through the industry, causing 4 meat processing plants in the state to close. Some employees across the state didn't get it. Most of them do now, Young said. The list of closed plants included Cargill and Hazleton, JBS in Soudertown, CTI in King of Prussia, and Empire Kosher Poultry in Mifflintown. The UFCW represents 35,000 workers at 1,200 locations in the state, including the 4 meat processing plants that had closed. Multiple calls and emails at each of the 4 plants that closed were not immediately returned. On April 14th, CTI Food, which employs approximately 100 people, reopened and was running at half capacity, according to Young. And this is the other thing, right? Is most of these plants that are closing down, they're reopening. This is why, like I'm saying, there's not going to be a food shortage. It's just motherfuckers are going to see shit on the shelves and grab it, you know what I'm saying? And fucking like it's going to be empty again. And you're going to go, oh, there's no food. And like, it's going to keep fucking happening until people go, yo, look, man, we need to raise the prices of this motherfucking pork and beef. And that's going to happen. We had a challenge to educate members and management alike, but all 4 of the plants were good and working with us. The numbers were simply too much to ignore. On April 14th, 162 workers at the Cargill plant tested positive for COVID-19, along with 20 cases at the JBS facility. The plant closures sparked concerns that the food supply chain disrupted, along with a reciprocal impact on prices paid to farmers for beef and poultry. Bridget Brigham, executive director of the Pennsylvania Beef Council, said the closures have not resulted in a shortage of beef available to consumers at the present time. Bing added that mass buying at grocery stores during the onset of the pandemic did result in empty shelves in the meat department. But after initial surge, most stores have been able to restock to meet consumer demand for beef. Again, there's not a fucking food shortage. There's plenty of fucking food. It's just, people keep fucking buying all of it. The current outlook for farmers in the wake of closed plants, however, may not be as rosy. Beef producers rely on packing plants to operate in a reliable schedule in order to meet consumer demand for our products. When processing plants are closed or closed for long periods of time, the impact of cattle and beef prices can have a devastating impact on producers. Before processing plants can get back to normal, however, Young wants to see some changes, including permanent daily temperature check for all employees, enhanced hygiene and sanitation provisions, a combination of barriers and distancing protocols. Oh man, my alarm's going off. Hold up. All right, there we go. Right? To separate workers, greater use of personal protective equipment. When they reopen, he said, and the cautious approach need to be taken. All right, let's see here. Because there's part of this I actually wanted to cover, right? One employee said he asked not to be identified. He became ill with the COVID-19 after being sent home from work on April 1st. He expects the plant to make long-term changes and the threat of the virus will never be completely gone. He said he wasn't surprised that the COVID-19 turned up at the Hazleton plant because many of the workers are from New York City, which is considered an epicenter of the virus, and they were bringing families to stay in the fucking area. Okay, I have to explain how this works because the rest of y'all probably don't understand anything outside of where you live at, just like I don't probably understand most of the stuff that happens where you are. Hazleton's in northern Pennsylvania, which is, it's not really close to New York. It's like 3 hours away, but 3 hours is not that far to fucking drive. Well, 2.5, something like that, 2.5, 3 hours. It's crossed 80. Anyway, right? The problem is that most of these individuals are Puerto Ricans, right? And like Dominicans and Cubans. There's a lot of Spanish folks up here and a lot of Italians up here. And so the vast majority of them have a lot of family who are going to be from like New Jersey and New York. And again, we're back to these fucking plants use a lot of immigrant labor. All right. Now you can say Puerto Ricans are immigrants and not. I'm going to go with not, you know what I'm saying? Because most of them speak English. The vast majority of them who I've ever met, legit, they work like Americans do. They live like they're accustomed to union and American wages. That's why Puerto Rico's as fucked up as it is, because like they will demand the same shit that they get in America, even though it's a different fucking economy down there. But neither here nor there. I ain't got nothing but love for them. You know what I mean? Like fucking, one of them, shit, man. One of my kids' godfathers is Puerto Rican. You know what I mean? And that was my choice. That was my homie. You know what I'm saying? My closest friend. Now, two of them. One was Cuban, one was Rican. I get along with Spanish folks. Anyway, right? That's kind of what the situation is up here. They're very intermingled. All right, extremely intermingled. Like New York and like fucking a lot of these northern cities in Pennsylvania, and actually a lot of the cities in PA or in New York and New Jersey are very, very intertwined. You'll run into people who are from New York just constantly, you know, like, and you'll end up not really having the same problem. Like you'll have a lot of people, you know what I mean, like who fucking go to New York from PA and like they're pretty welcome because like it's a Philly thing. Philly, New York, Jersey, you know, Camden. Like Camden runs into New Jersey, right? Or Camden runs into Philadelphia, right? And then like, you know, it's kind of like we're all kind of like the same shit. Like we don't really discriminate between the two. It's a different thing out here, you know what I mean? But it's, yeah, like this was gonna fucking happen. You know what I mean? Legit. Like this is how this shit operates. But again, and even with us, we have 4 fucking plants shut down. And like still we have fucking meat. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, granted there ain't much on the motherfucking shelves right now, but again, that's because of panic buying. It has literally nothing to do with food supply. They're just having a hard time getting supplies back into the fucking stores all the time because it's based on like a weekly schedule of how much is normally built, how much is normally bought, and those schedules aren't the same. And the people who supply the restaurants who get meat are different people than the warehouses that provide for the fucking groceries. Like this is a logistical question, and it's something that people really don't fucking understand because like they're not in the business, and I've been in the business for years. And I understand all this. I've worked in the business. I've fucking worked in the fucking warehouses. I've worked in the logistics end. I've worked in the shipping end. I've worked in the trucking end. I've worked in the retail end. Like I've fucking done orders. I've on all sides, on restaurants and fucking stores, the whole nine. It's a complicated system, but it's really not that fucking complicated. But like, you know, I just wanted to break this down because like it keeps getting brought up to me.